Richard. Thank you so much for having me. So, my name is Megan Rose. I am based in Los Angeles. I'm 27 years old, and I'm currently out here working as a spiritual advisor. So, my story started off in rural New Hampshire, so New England, the northeast of the United States. I grew up originally in a town with less than a thousand people as the population and ended up putting myself through traditional schooling systems, growing up with a traditionally Catholic practicing family. And I think I was probably the last person to expect that my story would end up where it is now, let alone my family and the people that grew up with me. So different from where I started, but I ended up moving out to Los Angeles just 2 months after my degree was done. So I went to school for marketing management and small business development and ended up working in finance throughout the time that I was in school full time. So I was working full time, going to school full time, and it ended up leading me on a one-way ticket to LA 2 months after my degree was done. And I continued on with a pretty normalized career in finance, ending up with a six-figure job at 23 years old in private investments. And at that point, I had been in finance for around 7 years total. And I remember getting in my car one day, seeing the GPS tell me that it was going to take 2 hours and 5 minutes to get back to my apartment in traditional LA fashion. And I actually utilized that time sitting in standstill traffic to write my resignation letter. I had no idea where I was going, no idea what I was going to pursue, but I did take that time to connect with myself and tapped in with Reiki energy healing, ended up getting gifted a tarot deck by my partner at the time and working with a mentor to start to learn how to read tarot cards, and walked down the street from my apartment at that time to a meditation studio. And I remember walking in, telling them, it doesn't matter what I'm doing as long as I'm in here working. And they were thrilled with that. Of course, who doesn't want someone that's hungry to work in your space? And I ended up working for minimum wage and hadn't made that little money since high school. So it was a huge ego blow, so many different things coming up, financial triggers, identity triggers. Who am I? What am I doing? How am I going to survive, from the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, just trying to get my basic needs met at that point, living in one of the largest metropolitan cities on the world. So just 2 weeks in, we had a shift in management, and I ended up taking the studio manager role. So after that point, had been studying tarot, had already gotten all of my certifications in Reiki energy healing. And the way the world works, when you listen to your gut, we had our Reiki teacher not show up for her fully booked class. And I remember calling the owner of the studio, and she was like, "We need you to jump in." So that day I led my first meditation class, and it just continued to move in that momentum and in that direction. Um, Not even a full year and a half later, I was at the point in the space with the clientele that I had. I had been reading for family and friends. They told me, "You need to start charging for these tarot readings," and got my own clientele, my own roster of people that were not only connected, but very happy with the services that they were getting, and convinced me to start doing this full time. So my last day at the meditation studio was Valentine's Day of 2020. And I'm sure as many people will know where this is going, the city of Los Angeles happened to shut down just 2 weeks later. I remember calling my mom at that point and being like, "Is my childhood bedroom still open? I'm probably going to end up coming back home." And she, being the lovely, supportive person that she is, was like, "Carry through, you know what to do." So the world shut down, really. And I transitioned all of my work online, leading workshops, classes, taking all of my clients virtually. And it not only survived, but it started thriving. And I look at where I'm at now to where I began. And I think my story is the perfect example for the clients that I work with now to let them know it does not matter where you are. If you want to end up somewhere else, you can make it happen.
That is absolutely inspiring, Megan. Absolutely wonderful. Now, you were able to pivot at a very, very, very difficult time. I want to take you back a few steps. What made you decide to quit your job? What had actually happened for you to do that just impromptu? Because a lot of women hold on to jobs because they need them, they're scared, the fear of what am I going to do next? What if it fails? What was it that made you make that decision and leave?
For me, it wasn't a matter of whether this was the financially sound decision. It wasn't, is this the smart thing for me to do? But being someone who had grown up in discomfort, someone who had grown up without money or feeling a level of inclusion, whether that was in my family dynamic or with friends, not really feeling a sense of community as I was growing up, I was comfortable with discomfort from the get go, which is why I always tell people your story doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fully prepared before you make big jumps. You can actually get a lot of that influence to make uncomfortable decisions because of the discomfort that you've already experienced. So I preface that just letting people know I didn't grow up with money. I didn't grow up with healthy community support. So a lot of my reliance in life came from myself already at that point. So when I was in this job, feeling completely misaligned with what I was doing, the work that I was doing, the type of lifestyle that I was living, working 10-hour shifts with an hour commute in, and as I mentioned earlier, sometimes upward of 2-hour commutes back home. I just went home that day and realized I'm spending more than 50% of my life right now doing something that I don't feel passionately about. So the decision came from wanting to prioritize my happiness and my passion before my financial stability and security. And at that point, it was a true dedication to the vision that I saw of myself living in alignment, living happy, and living with passion and purpose that drove me. And I definitely accredit some of that jump to the use of credit cards as well. So, for the time being, after that jump happened pretty immediately, it was very financially unstable. I won't sugarcoat it. I was not living lavishly for at least a couple of years before this really took off.